Internet station for news and talk radio programming. Find us online at bigtalker.live.
If you're enjoying the content you find on Big Talker, any of your shows, all the hosts, you really need to make sure you're following and liking us on Facebook. There's a video section. You can watch all the live video of programs as they happen. You can also see video of past content that you may have missed for whatever reason. Plus, even better, you can share it with a friend. Let other people know how much you enjoy the Big Talker and the great content we provide, and interact with other listeners and the hosts in the comment section live as it happens. Big Talker Net on Facebook.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Pender County Emergency Management says crews will be back on the job today, battling a fire in the Holly Shelter Game Lands in Hampstead that now covers more than 1,500 acres. Emergency managers posted on social media that nearly a half dozen agencies have responded to try and extinguish the fire. As of late last night, it was 14% contained. So far, there is no threat to any homes, but smoke from the fire may affect people living in Maple Hill, Holly Ridge, and other neighborhoods along the border between Pender and Onslow counties. A man charged in a fatal hit-and-run has pleaded not guilty in a New Hanover County courtroom. Walter Wade Ang is charged with felony hit-and-run resulting in death after allegedly driving a vehicle into an apartment in December of 2021. It happened at Hawthorne Commons near UNCW on Saturday, December 4th. A couple in the apartment was rushed to New Hanover Regional Medical Center with serious injuries. 48-year-old Kelly Prince later died at the hospital. Ang's next court date is September 26th. New Hanover County school leaders have released a new policy that aims to address sexual misconduct complaints more quickly. Sydney Hoover with the Star News reports, earlier this month, the school board unanimously voted to add an informal investigation process into its Title IX policy. The new process will provide faster resolution than the formal process. There are specific rules. The informal process is only an option if a student files a complaint involving another student or an employee against another employee. It cannot be used if the complaint involves a student and an employee. And happening today, bring your friends, your chairs, your blankets, and your love of jazz. The Bellamy Mansion in Wilmington is hosting 4 upcoming Jazz at the Mansion events starting today and going into October. You're invited to the back lawn of the Bellamy Mansion for a sizzling summer show with the Mangrove Quintet led by Manny Santos on the drums. That event will begin at 6:30. For more on these stories, you can head on over to wwaytv3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Still going to hold on to the hot temperatures, but won't be as hot as it was yesterday. We'll climb into the low 90s inland of the coast, upper 80s to near 90 for the coastal areas today under partly cloudy skies and a few showers and storms in store for us throughout the afternoon hours. But as we head towards the overnight hours tonight, we have a better chance for a few showers and storms in the Cape here, but not expecting anything widespread as our temperatures drop down to the lower 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
I'm a construction superintendent working on a new housing project in the area. I've always loved being a part of a construction crew, watching the plans come to life. But I wanted more. I went to CFCC and trained in construction management technology. Now my skills allow me to have the life I once dreamed of. I make great money and can get a job anywhere. I got my start at CFCC, and you can too. Visit cfcc.edu/trades and get started today.
Jill, why don't you tell the class what you did this weekend?
Well, my dad and I went in search of some magical minnows and found a zillion of them in the stream from our lookout rock. Then my sister and I escaped from an evil slug king and went back to my super twig fort for safety. Then we told stories till it got dark, and the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Wow. Where were you, Jill?
We went to the forest. It's not that far away.
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad, right here on the Big Talker Network. Please visit the Big Talker website, bigtalker.live. Download the app for Android and iOS devices. You can peruse the schedule of content to catch your favorite time. If you download the app, you can catch your favorite show anytime, right there at your fingertips. Listen live to any of the fantastic content that we're developing and bringing on board. We have new shows like Fit After 50, or Living Fit After 50, Fridays at 1 in the afternoon. We also have Defenders Live, first hour, running 9 to 10 in the evening. And we're building, we're growing, we're doing everything we can to become better than we were. And if you don't like it, I'm kidding. If you like it, if you don't like it, doesn't matter. Send us an email, because we cannot improve, we cannot respond if you don't tell us, right? So send an email, hop in the chat, give us a call, 910-444-0281. We are your local station on the internet, on the webs, that's right. Got some updates coming, all kinds of cool things happening. And yeah, we're going to have some guests on this morning, talking about science and technology, and this is where I have the opportunity to, what's the word I'm looking for? Chastise many of the people on the planet who have decided to be, by choice, scientifically or technologically ignorant. You're not helping anybody. Being a science denier or being scientifically ignorant, I mean, I'm not a scientist, but man, I at least am curious. And some of the words that are used in science and technology, whether it's physics or biology or whatever else, are part of the lexicon of our language. However, we don't seem to understand these things, like the word parameter, right? Which is ancient Greek, para being beside or above. And, of course, meter being a measurement, right? So your parameter is a measurement beside or above what it is you're working on. That is, you need to make a box. This box is going to fit an item. And some of the parameters are it needs to not slide around inside the box. So your box is built based on parameters to fulfill the function need that you are requesting. And if you aren't aware of parameters and you get them wrong, well, you end up overshooting your planet, or, you know, any number of things where a very expensive error embarrasses you. I'll break it down for the slow people who seem to think that math is scary and they don't do math, and I lived another day without dealing with math. Actually, you did. If you made a left turn in traffic, you actually were in your head actually calculating a function on when it is that you can turn to make sure that you have the proper space for the car to not hit you or for you to not hit the car. Right? Because if you take off at the wrong time, it's a bad thing. We've seen that. I mean, there are tons of videos on YouTube about that. But by and large, we know how to make a left turn across traffic without getting hit. And it requires a whole lot of math and a number of parameters that you're just simply not aware of and choose to remain ignorant about. Now, some of the most amazing advances in technology over the past 20, 30, 50, 70, 100 years have all involved people understanding science, technology, and the natural world. Independent of any belief you may have, right? Because that's a personal thing. It has absolutely nothing to do with the way the world works. The spinning of the planet happens without you. Right? And as was asked, I think it's a great gag, where the kid asks his father, what happens after you die? The father says, lots of things happen after you die. They just don't involve you. Well, that's sort of what's happening. Every time you spend $1,000 on a new iPhone, all you're doing is paying a lot of money to avoid facing your own ignorance with technology. Right? And it's the ultimate scapegoat. Lots of people love to do this, right? I don't know, I just don't understand this newfangled stuff. No, that's an excuse. That's a cop-out. If you are able to understand even a third of the English language, right? That's around 200,000, maybe 250,000 words. Then chances are you can handle a little bit of science, a little bit of math, and being not ignorant. I mean, a lot of people seem to think, I'm gonna go back to, what was it, Die Hard with Bruce Willis and his wife. Was it the second movie, I think? And she says, my husband seems to think that technology peaked with frozen pizza. Well, guess what? Somebody had to not just invent that pizza, but use technology and science to make sure that the pizza would not kill people when it was taken out of the package, heated up, and eaten. Right? There's a lot of things we had, like the internal combustion engine. I mean, that was a pretty radical design at the time. Airplane, pretty radical design at the time, but these were people that were scientifically curious. The Wright brothers were not scientists. They were not aviators. There was no aviator at the time. There was a couple of guys with an idea and said, hey, let's try this out. And that spirit is gone. It's been crushed by the public school system and education. Unless, of course, you're willing to pay extra for it, and hopefully your kid isn't being prescribed buttloads of medicine that they don't need because they're kids. Let them be kids. Part of being a kid is being energetic, being hyperactive, because they are little bundles of energy. Their cells are doing stuff that older people will never know again. And yet we get all mad at them. And they're the ones coming up with creative solutions to all kinds of problems that we come up that we created as the older generation and the generations before us. Some out of ignorance, some out of greed, for lack of, better defense. But how did we get an airplane? Because we had a couple of curious guys who threw a bunch of stuff together and said, hey, let's see if this works. Funnier still, they were not alone, right? Because these guys were one... okay, back up. Worked at Military Channel. We had lots in the movie tone newsreels. And hundreds of clips of all the crazy flying machines that people tried to make. And some were just downright deadly. Some of the earliest helicopter type things were actually like at great risk of decapitating the operator. But then two guys from a bike shop in Ohio came on out to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina and said, yeah, we're going to try this and we want to do it somewhere that if we crash, well, at least we can throw the body in the water. Or if we crash, it's not going to be like slamming into the side of a brick or into a rock, into a mountain. We're going to do it somewhere where it's kind of soft. He's 20 feet off the air. He might break an arm on if he had to bail out, right? So, and that was all their safety. There was a whole lot going on. The guy's like, yeah, I'm going to climb in this thing and risk my neck. It's not like they had a parachute or a helmet or any designs, right? This is absolute to the wall type of insane. They're betting on themselves. They're betting on, well, I might get hurt, but I don't think I'll die. That's a pretty good way to start it. And they weren't military either. Now think about it. In the military, right, when they were developing ejection seats and parachutes, they really didn't have, like, volunteers. Hey, I would love to step up and get shot or out of a cannon, basically, right? If you look at the way the Harrier, I think it is, or a couple of these aircraft that go so fast that the seat itself actually has like 2, 3, 4 little rockets on it. So when it's time to bail out, it actually shoots you like a cannon, a rocket-propelled missile out of the aircraft to clear you from the aircraft before your parachute opens. Now, would you be the volunteer to step up and say, hey, I think I want to try that ride? You know? That sounds like fun. Put me in a plane at 20, 30, 35,000 feet and then strap a missile to my butt and then shoot me out of the aircraft doing 500 miles an hour, doing, forward, and I'm going to go straight up at 300 miles an hour strapped to this rocket. That sounds like fun. That sounds safe. Yeah, sign me up. No, the Wright brothers didn't have that. But they were curious. And what I think is making education ineffective in America in the late 20th and earliest 20th and 21st century here in the United States. Because we are now testing more for standards. We are now testing more for finances, right? We're not testing for information retention or the ability to command that information. That is, once you have knowledge, right, trivial knowledge, like, I don't know, lots of people have trivial knowledge about TV shows. You can't really do much to illustrate your command of this information. I mean, that was a big thing when I was in school. Okay, you understand the concept, now apply it. That changes the game, doesn't it? Because now you got to think. Now you have to apply what it is you learned to a new situation and see if you can't improve it or explain it, whatever it is. And without being curious, we don't have these developments. We don't have these advancements. In fact, yesterday, Dr. Cahoon and I were talking about the solar tower in Germany. Aldo Steinfeld, what a great name, has developed a process, or I should say he sort of came to understand a process and has refined it to the point that he is able to generate millions and millions and millions of gallons of aircraft kerosene, aircraft jet fuel out of thin air. Yep. Now, I'm guessing it's been about 4 months, 5 months since I railed on the boom supersonic and the insanity of sustainable aircraft fuel, which was supposed to be a blend of this, that, and the other thing, and you could put it with this and that kind of. You could blend a little bit of it with the regular fuel to try and extend your fuel range. The problem is SAF, right? Sustainable aircraft fuel is incredibly caustic to an engine. So it will tear the engine apart, causing more damage and requiring way more maintenance than solar kerosene, solar jet fuel. So the solar jet fuel, as it turns out, is identical to regular jet fuel. Because that's what it is. It's just a long-chain hydrocarbon. There might be some impurities or some processing elements that have been added, additives, right? For, we have detergents in our gasoline to help keep our fuel lines clean and carburetors and fuel injectors clean, etc., etc. Maybe I understand that some of those same elements would be blended in with the fuel, but the process, the base component itself is the fuel. Now, here's why that's so exciting. One of the things that Europe is really tripping on right now is how they would get fuel to sustain their aviation program, whether it's commercial flights, military flights, cargo flights, transports, whatever. And it seems that most of that fuel has been brought in from that horrible, evil country over on the other side of the ocean. Well, suddenly, if they are no longer the sole supplier of affordable, sustainable aviation fuel, you can imagine that they're going to be hurting. Because suddenly they don't have customers. Customers don't need to go to the most evil person on the block to get fuel. That, to me, is pretty exciting. I would go so far as to say it's pretty damned liberating for much of the world that uses aircraft. Now, again, being scientifically literate but ignorant in a lot of ways, I'm curious. And as we discussed, it is quite possible to, I didn't realize cracking was the term. But cracking towers have been used for at least a century to refine crude oil into different components, some of which even end up in little plastic devices and packaging that you carry around. But also diesel oil, diesel fuel, gasoline, propane, methane, all of these elements are just long-chain hydrocarbons in different lengths and proportions, right? So crude oil is so thick and so nasty that when you crack it, some of the heavier elements are what gives you diesel oil and diesel fuel. However, some of the lighter elements, you get kerosene, you get gasoline, etc., etc. So if you start with kerosene, it's going to be a little harder to crack, but you would be able to distill gasoline, propane, all kinds of other elements straight out of thin air. Just imagine, according to this guy, he is saying that with like 5%, less than 5% of the surface area of the Sahara Desert, he would be able to provide sustainable aviation fuel for global consumption, to satisfy the global demand for aviation fuel generators out of thin air. Russia is not going to have that strength anymore. They are not going to be able to say, hey, we have your fuel, you must get it from us. No, we're making our own, brah. All I need is a bright, sunny day. You don't even need that. All you need is a little sunlight, and these concave mirrors focus the energy at such a high level that, as Dr. Cahoon put it, cracking hydrocarbon requires an enormous amount of energy, almost to the point of lost ROI, right? Lost return on investment, because you're having to put so much energy and money into the electricity to crack the hydrocarbon so that you can get kerosene or gasoline or propane or whatever out of it to get it into your cracking tower. It is an enormous amount of energy. Now, that energy source has been replaced by the sun, that the energy itself is actually effectively free. True, the mirrors, the motors, and the control, right? The device control to coordinate and make all those mirrors dance. That's a different story. That's that one-time investment. And we already have that technology. That technology's been off the shelf for 20, 30 years now. Right? Following the sun and pointing a mirror at an object, we've been doing... You can do that with an Arduino. Right? The code is posted right there on the internet anywhere you want to go. Right? There's 15, 20 copies of it. I love the guy that built the sun follower. It will sit there and charge your phone and power your life while you're out camping. And it will follow the sun for you to always maintain the greatest efficiency of energy transfer of sunlight to electric. So all of these technologies exist. And one guy, creative, curious, and very well educated, said, hey, I think I can make... What's going on over there? I'm pretty sure I can make kerosene, aviation fuel out of thin air. These are the people that need to be leading the country. These are the people leading the world anyway, that should be in charge of our education, because how did he come to this? That's what we need more of. And as we pointed out in yesterday's show, we had to import a lot of that because of how Germany approaches their education. Now, true, during the World War II and all that, not a good time for them, but since then, certainly, and throughout German history, their engineering, mechanical, and otherwise has been extremely high level. And that's because they keep kids curious. They introduce them to ideas and get their little brains set on fire, where they just have more and more questions. They just gotta know. And that's what it is for me. This radio station was in bad shape when I got here, and I was told to fix it. Okay, first I gotta figure out what everything was and what it did. I had to be curious. And in this case, that curiosity served me well, because it was almost mandatory or mandated that I figure this stuff out, even stuff I'd never seen before. Unfortunately, I don't think that much of the nation who have been through the public school system would be able to adapt and survive given such extreme shifts in the base of understanding. Now, I rue the day that the Boy Scouts got away from the Boy Scouts. That was depressing, because that was one of the few places where I felt safe to explore, right? Because in school, if you were smart, if you were a nerd, you got your butt beat. You got stuffed in a locker, right? You had your face shoved in a trash can or toilet or God knows what else. Yeah, high school wasn't fun to me, but I tell you what, I'm way ahead of the technology than a lot of these kids. And I'd prefer to have a better understanding of the world around me than to be ignorant and dependent on others to do for me what I should be able to do quite well for myself without anybody's intervention. Right? Being fiercely independent is not a joke. If I need your help, I'll ask for it, but for the most part, I can do it myself. Not even worried about it. But it takes that curiosity so that you would be able, so that I would be able to, anyway, assimilate and incorporate new information based on information I already have. We learn at the fringe of our understanding. Without that understanding, however, there's no chance. Because you're not assimilating information, you're not building on your base of knowledge. All you're doing is saying, "Oh, look, another latte." That should be depressing. If you're not able to manage your own technology, be curious. Ask, why does this work? That was the greatest thing when I was a kid. That was the only question that people didn't mind. How does that work? Because a lot of other kids at my age at the time were asking, like, "Can I have a cookie? Why is the sky blue?" No. I already knew that stuff. It was like, okay, I got that. That part was explained when I was very young. Now, I'm curious as to how it is a concave mirror works. Once that was explained, got it. Now I can use that information, and when it's time to roast an ant, I know how to focus light. Right? Then lasers came along, and I had to understand the difference between a laser and a phaser, because I was a Star Trek fan, and both words sounded the same, but they invoked different technologies. And then we had taser. So we got a laser, a phaser, and a taser. I used to have a phaser on my pedal board. The cops are carrying tasers, and laser pointers have been used in meetings. You see what I'm saying? This technology is something you need to understand, that we as a collection need to understand and be less afraid of, but we can't do that unless we're curious. And curiosity is what leads to reading. Because you want to read about things like this boom supersonic insanity, you start doing the math. Oh my God, I forgot you guys don't do math. You're too stupid to do math. No, you're not. You are incredibly bright. The brain power that we possess to process things like mathematics and concepts is far above any other mammal or animal on this planet. The fact that people choose to be ignorant about it is a whole nother story. There's not a lot we can do about that. I don't know how to make people, or how to, what's the word I'm looking for? You need to get that curiosity and inspire that creativity, inspire that curiosity, so that we end up with more people like Aldo Steinfeld and the Wright brothers. But without that curiosity and hand in hand with an education that encourages curiosity, we're going to continue to have ignorant, stupid people who seem to think they know what they're doing. And that's getting old, ladies and gentlemen. Because if America had an actual effective educational program, I'm betting that somebody in America would already be making kerosene out of thin air. We'll be right back on the Asylum, Your Refuge in a World Gone Mad right after this. Don't go nowhere.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Pender County Emergency Management says crews will be back on the job today, battling a fire in the Holly Shelter Game Lands in Hampstead that now covers more than 1,500 acres. Emergency managers posted on social media that nearly a half dozen agencies have responded to try and extinguish the fire. As of late last night, it was 14% contained. So far, there is no threat to any homes, but smoke from the fire may affect people living in Maple Hill, Holly Ridge, and other neighborhoods along the border between Pender and Onslow counties. A man charged in a fatal hit and run has pleaded not guilty in a New Hanover County courtroom. Walter Wade Ang is charged with felony hit and run resulting in death after allegedly driving a vehicle into an apartment in December of 2021. It happened at Hawthorne Commons near UNCW on Saturday, December 4th. A couple in the apartment was rushed to New Hanover Regional Medical Center with serious injuries. 48-year-old Kelly Prince later died at the hospital. Ang's next court date is September 26th. New Hanover County school leaders have released a new policy that aims to address sexual misconduct complaints more quickly. Sydney Hoover with the Star News reports, earlier this month, the school board unanimously voted to add an informal investigation process into its Title IX policy. The new process will provide faster resolution than the formal process. There are specific rules. The informal process is only an option if a student files a complaint involving another student or an employee against another employee. It cannot be used if the complaint involves a student and an employee. And happening today, bring your friends, your chairs, your blankets, and your love of jazz. The Bellamy Mansion in Wilmington is hosting 4 upcoming Jazz at the Mansion events starting today and going into October. You're invited to the back lawn of the Bellamy Mansion for a sizzling summer show with the Mangrove Quintet, led by Manny Santos on the drums. That event will begin at 6:30. For more on these stories, you can head on over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Still going to hold on to the hot temperatures, but won't be as hot as it was yesterday. We'll climb into the low 90s inland of the coast, upper 80s to near 90 for the coastal areas today under partly cloudy skies, and a few showers and storms in store for us throughout the afternoon hours. But as we head towards the overnight hours tonight, we have a better chance for a few showers and storms in the Cape here, but not expecting anything widespread as our temperatures drop down to the lower 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
Veteran Awareness sponsored by You Are Not Alone. Today's veteran homeless rate is approximately 19,750, and the numbers are declining because of the various veteran programs. If you are a veteran you know is homeless, please call 877-4AID-VET. This is a confidential and toll-free call. From this veteran to other veterans, please be there to help our brother and sister veterans. Again, the number is 1-877-424-3838. And thank you for your service.
Folks, the sad truth of it is most of what we're seeing in the news cycle is just noise, and it's recycled noise at that. Nothing informative, nothing that actually helps us discern the times that we live in. That's why we started doing Heard Tell. Every morning right here on Big Talker Network, 7 a.m. with a replay at 3 p.m., we talk and discuss the issues of the day, culture and politics with knowledgeable guests, no yelling, no caterwauling, just grown folk talk about the issues that matter. Join me, Andrew Donaldson, every weekday morning for Heard Tell.
Hey, welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad, right here on the Big Talker Network. Please visit bigtalker.live, our website. Download the app for Android and iOS devices. Peruse our schedule of content. Once you got that nifty app on your phone, pair that smart device with your automobile's entertainment system, and you can take the Big Talker anywhere and everywhere you want to be, just like a real radio station. That's right. But unlike regular radio stations, you can drive from here to Chicago and not drop a beat. You can make it to the left coast and still not miss any of the fantastic content right here on the Big Talker. There's also an email link so you can send us any comments, questions, concerns, compliments, or critiques you may have, because we cannot improve without your feedback. So far, y'all ain't doing a lot of writing. I don't know if it's because you can't, or is it just you don't want to. Must be a little too much energy. If that's too much, you can call in 910-444-0281. Give us a piece of your mind, and I promise we will roast you appropriately. I'm kidding. Anybody's able to talk on this thing, and sometimes we misunderstand, sometimes we stand corrected, but without that curiosity to at least try something, we will never know. And that brings us back to, some more of what I'm trying to fill the time before my guest gets here, because it's amazing what the creative, intelligent, curious people are able to achieve. And there's a number of options for that, right? A number of outlets for that. And what's cool is the interwebs makes it even more accessible. One of the most exciting ones, I haven't had a chance to try it myself because I don't have the disposable income. But some of these Arduino projects. When I was a kid, they used to sell Heath kits, right? All the way down to the box and power supply. You put it together, boom, you got a working piece of gear. Right? Help build a linear power amplifier for ham radio operation when I was a kid. Built a number of power supplies for different types of antenna and broadcasting amplifiers. All before I had a license to drive a car, okay? Because I was curious. Most of the kids around me were not curious. They were just taking the spoon-fed BS and trying to wear the latest in fashion and trying to be hip and cool, and I wasn't. Because that's not how the world works, or at least that's not how I was taught the world works. The world works according to a complete set of rules that very few of us have bothered to understand. Gravity, for example, is one of them. While maybe at the PhD and beyond level, gravity is still a question in a number of manners. However, for the layman who just need to be scientifically literate, can say that the mass of an object is what determines its gravitational pull, right? So the bigger the object, the greater the pull, which is why all the planets orbit the sun, because the sun is heavier than everything else. So, and how orbits work, if you can't wrap your head around how an orbit works, you're stuck. These are things you need. These are things that the brain is easily able to understand. And over the course of history, most educational processes introduce those concepts at an earlier and earlier age, the more readily we are able to understand them. For example, addition and subtraction. We now introduce this to children at a very young age. 2, 3, 4, 5. As soon as they can talk, as soon as they say mine. Mine, 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 me, mine. Now you can start counting. This one's for you, this one's for me. You have one, I have one. This one's for you, this one's for me. You have two, I have two. You're starting to count. You're starting to develop these concepts. And it seems so rudimentary now to us here in the 21st century, but think about it. People were the very first recordings of human beings on a clay tablet were counting. People in their 20s and 30s had to figure out how to count. But we don't seem to understand that now, right? Thousands of years have passed and we just sort of take it for granted that, hey, I can count on my fingers and toes. And that's the extent of your math. That's the extent of the math we had back then. We were still understanding that, hey, if I have a basket of 5 fish, I don't have to count the fish, I just have to count the basket. So if I have 5 baskets of fish, I know that each basket has 5 fish. I don't have to count all 25. I know there's 25 fish there. That's how we discovered multiplication. It wasn't some guy said, hey, this is how math works. No. We were stupid and we were like, okay, we need to figure out how to make this work. If we're going to do any kind of business, I need to know that my wares are of equal value to the wares that you're trading me. So 2 loaves of bread for 3 fish, maybe that was the math. I don't know. I don't know what the value system was, but the fact that we established one on such a rudimentary concept that thousands of years later, we're still using those same mechanical information, that same approach, right? We might be using abaci back in the day, or little impressions on a clay tablet, but we were developing. We were working on it. We were curious. And we were trying, just like that aircraft that the Wright brothers brought to Kitty Hawk. Did they think it was going to work? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Was there a guarantee? No. Was there a lot of safety involved? Nah, not really. They did what they could with what they had and what they understood. And the rest of it, they were like, if we don't try, we won't know. My stepfather worked at Sandia National Laboratories for years, and one of the tasks that he was presented by the Senate Arms Committee was to investigate the USS Iowa incident. Now, if you've read the report, you understand that the Navy was called upon to apologize to the sailor that they had blamed erroneously and with malice, I think, for what happened on that boat when it was actually bad practice and bad ideas and bad design. But my stepfather went all the way back to the beginning of this thing, and he tested every last item. He tested the propellant, he tested the rams, he tested the shells, he tested everything to determine what happened. It takes a smart person to do that with multiple disciplines. He had to understand physics. He had to understand chemistry, right? He had to understand heat, expansion, explosions, right? Rapid expansions of gas, which is basically what an explosion is. The faster the combustion, the greater the shockwave effect, right? I mean, if you've ever seen anybody shoot a 50 cal, it clears the ground around the muzzle because the bullet is leaving the muzzle so fast, supersonic, that it disrupts the air around it. Now me, I like being scientifically curious. You know why? There's more interesting information in Scientific American, Popular Science, and Popular Mechanics than there will ever be in Us magazine, People magazine, any of that garbage. Personalities do not interest me. People, smart people, are interesting. Celebrities are not that interesting. They're cute, they have a lot of money, they spend a lot of money to look that cute to make you think that they're actually somebody important. They're not. They have a job just like you, it's just their job is in front of millions of people. Your job may not be in front of millions of people. But that doesn't mean that anyone is more important than the other. The fact that they elected Schwarzenegger in California was mind-blowing when I was a kid. Turns out he wasn't so bad at it. But that was a surprise. I mean, the first one, very few people are going to remember this, but when Reagan ran, they were like, what? You're going to let the Gimp run? Or Gipper, or whatever his nickname was in the movie? right? With and what was the other one with Bozo or the chimpanzee? I mean, I've never seen a Ronald Reagan movie. I watched 80 years of it on television, and that was enough for me. But that's not the same type of curiosity or creativity that I want to talk about. I want to talk about the ones that come up with ideas that fix things. And one of them, and I'm probably going to give it away a little early, but it has to do with oil spills. And I was unaware of this. Remember when the Exxon Valdez, a drunk guy, kind of tipped his boat a little? Don't tip the boat, don't rock the boat, baby. Don't tip the boat over. Yeah. And then Dawn dishwashing detergent, gentle enough to clean the wildlife and tough enough for your dirtiest dishes or whatever the hell it is. That's not what cleaned up the shoreline. That's not what did the real work. That was just marketing. One of the best at it, I would say. But it turns out, and I wasn't aware of this, but I was curious, because I'd read another article thinking, hey, this might be a great way to... No, I was already behind the times. Apparently, they've been using fertilizer to clean up oil spills for decades, and it works remarkably well. I didn't know this. You dump some fertilizer on there, and the microbes are able to work with both elements and actually correct it, right? They ate all the oil. They are what cleaned up the actual mess on the shoreline. That's pretty remarkable, I think. Because somebody kind of put two and two together off to the side saying this Dawn dishwashing is a waste of time. We have millions and millions of gallons of oil spilled out all over the ocean, and a little bit of Dawn dishwashing detergent isn't going to do anything. But if we dump a bunch of fertilizer, activated fertilizer on here, the fertilizer microbes will actually work with the oil and consume it, break it down into something smaller that will actually dissolve in the ocean. Whoa. How's that for remarkable? Those are the types of things that we need to develop in America. We don't need Sean Whalen cutting out Made in China tags, sewing in Made in America tags, and then saying that he's a patriotic American trying to sell Made in America products that were actually made in China. He's a lying piece of crap. Got busted by the Federal Trade Commission for, what, $115,000, I think? That's what America produces. The types of grifting and shallow mental behavior, that's what the United States is known for. That's what we create. Aldo Steinfeld is creating jet fuel out of thin air. And we got Sean Whalen. How's that? I think our education system needs to be readjusted so that people like Sean Whalen wouldn't think of doing something so stupid. Not that it's illegal, it's just unethical. But there's a whole generation now who seems to think that unethical behavior is cool. Right, I'm not so much upset that Sean Whalen committed this crime. I'm more upset that he thought it was okay to do this. Like he was doing something cool. He was getting away with something while ostensibly promoting Made in America. When he himself was the one signed up with China, giving China money. Tons of money. Still does. It's just now he has to keep the Made in China label. So if you go to Sean Whalen's website, I believe it's called Lions Not Sheep. Boy, that's a ridiculous neckbeard kind of thing to say, don't you think? Hey, I'm Mr. Tough Guy, and I don't have a single marketable skill except lying and defrauding the American public by selling you stuff that's not made in America, but claiming that it's made in America, even though it's made by one of our greatest enemies over at the China's Communist Party. So Sean Whalen isn't a very good American if he's promoting this type of fraud, right? That's an unethical behavior. And then passing it off and profiting on it. That's the part that makes me nauseous. And the fact that we have to have a law and that somebody had to actually go after this moron. If we had an effective education platform in this country, there would this just wouldn't be an option. Sean Whalen would not think, hey, I think I'm going to defraud everybody I can to make as much money as I can, and hopefully I won't get caught. That's where we are. But other countries are looking at the situation thinking not, oh my God, we need more stuff made in America, even if it isn't. Oh my God. No. They're like, hey, we need to get the hell away from Russia's power, Russia's energy, Russia's influence. How can we do that? Hey, if I point a lot of really strong sunlight at ambient air, I can create aircraft fuel. Let's try that. I think I can do that. Oh yeah, it works. That was kind of cool. Now let's scale this thing up so I can make 3 million gallons of aircraft fuel out of thin air. And maybe, just maybe, we can reduce or maybe eliminate our dependence on Russian power for our aircraft. Not just in Germany or bits. No. If you read the article, Aldo is saying, with this little patch of ground, I can generate enough aviation fuel for global supply. That's visionary. We don't have anybody visionary here. We got Sean Whalen selling made in America products that were made in China and falsely labeled as made in America while trying to unethically, it's just horrible human beings. And yet here we are supporting them. While he's buying stuff in China, selling it as made in America, other people in other countries are actually doing something. I find that to be extremely exciting. And we have another story. I don't want to give it away yet, but it's kind of related to the idea of throwing fertilizer onto an oil spill. Holy mackerel, that was cool. I had no idea, did you? I did not know that fertilizer had been used to clean up oil spills, and it is incredibly effective, far more so than Dawn dishwashing liquid or any dishwashing liquid. The concept of a dishwashing liquid has not changed. It just makes oil into a water-soluble compound. But a bottle of Dawn is not going up against the Exxon Valdez. But a couple of tons of fertilizer and the microbes in there grow and do their job and assimilate and eat this stuff and poop out something that's water-soluble, dissolves in the ocean, becomes plant food for other, natural process. But somebody had to be curious and say, hey, I know this about this item and I know this about this item. If I put the two together, chances are this is what should happen. And now we have the ability to generate aircraft fuel out of thin air. And we have the ability to more effectively manage oil spills on the open ocean without having to bow to Dawn, I think it was Dawn, right? Dishwashing detergent, right? Oh, look, we're caring for the wildlife. It was feel-good stuff, and don't get me wrong, they threw their money and they threw their energy behind it. But they weren't the ones who saved the Prince Charles Sound, right? I didn't know that. I thought it had been that company. If you would watch the ad, you would think that they had single-handedly saved the world with a bottle of Dawn dishwashing detergent. It turns out they saved a couple of birds and a penguin. Okay, that's cool. Good job. I mean, nice, but I think there should be more emphasis, or at least a greater awareness, of the technique using fertilizer and how it is the microbes in there are able to assimilate between fertilizer and the oil to actually eat the oil, right? I mean, that's pretty remarkable. Everybody should be looking in on that. So what is it going to take to get our citizens in the United States somewhere between the ages of 5 and 50, interested, curious, and scientifically literate at some base level, so that they're not complaining about stuff that they don't understand. It's like saying, oh my God, the sun's too hot. Nah, the sun's the same temperature. The fact that the Earth is tilted 22 degrees, 23 degrees, and currently the northern hemisphere is tipped a little bit towards the sun, and to understand that that little bit of a tip is enough to give us seasons of such extreme weather differences, right? That as our angle to the sun changes throughout the year, and it's just a little bit. It's not like we're hitting one side of the Earth and then the other. The whole Earth is getting some sunlight except the extreme poles, right? But for the most part, from Capricorn to Cancer, everybody's getting sunlight, and it's just a matter, are you tilted a little towards, a little away? But that little bit of shift in the Goldilocks zone is enough to generate snow or tornadoes or hurricanes. But not being able to understand that's just straight ignorance. That's your own fault. If you're not able to understand how an orbit works, how the spinning of the planet works, these are fundamental concepts. And they're not difficult to understand. We teach them to 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. If you're over the age of 20 and you still don't believe how simple an orbit is, I don't even want to get your opinion on the Constitution. That's only 7 paragraphs, and so many of the people I've spoken with have been like, no, I've never read it, it's too long. We studied there's 5 actual workable doing something paragraphs in the Constitution. And we spent an entire semester in high school, which doesn't happen anymore, discussing just that. Then we spent another semester discussing just the Bill of Rights and the other amendments. Now, true, that was 50 years ago, or 42 years ago, somewhere in there, 45 years ago. It's not that it's changed, it's just cyber brain sclerosis over here. It hasn't been able to retain all of it, that I still have to ask smart people like Andrew, hey, how does that work? Are you allowed as president to sit at the desk and put Goya beans everywhere? Is that normal? Actually, I need to stop caring about that and start caring about, wow, how soon until we have solar kerosene powering our aircraft and giving a big middle finger to Russia and China? Y'all thought you had the energy market cornered? Well, Aldo Steinfeld just kicked you in the groin and said, get away from me. Kicked you to the curb. You have lost so much of your power because of Aldo Steinfeld. And the thing is, y'all can get mad, right? In the old days, somebody from Russia would have been dispatched to poison him, kill him, assassinate him, Khashoggi style or whatever Putin style he's got out now. But it'd be too late. The stuff's already published. It's being peer-reviewed. It has been peer-reviewed before it was published in American Scientific. Or Scientific American, sorry. So that cat's already out the bag, man. Russia's days for energy overlording is pretty much done. We got all those Steinfeld's process of generating aircraft fuel from thin air. And everything about it is just like regular. Sustainable aircraft requires its own distribution, its own handling, its own transport, and it will destroy your aircraft engine, so you can only blend so much into regular fuel. Aldo, his stuff drops right in. You can use the same tanks, the same trucks, the same hose. You can run your aircraft 100% on solar aircraft fuel without any damage. And what's cool, for a while there, they were using biofuel, right, where they would take oil, cooking oil from various restaurants and then turn that into kerosene, which, jet fuel. But the thing is, with solar aircraft fuel, your airplane is, I don't know, it's going to be cheaper all the way around. And when you get off the plane at your destination, your entire aircraft doesn't smell like a taco. I like that idea. If you've ever been behind one of those trucks burning biodiesel that's been converted from food, you can smell the french fries and tacos and shrimp. That's pretty nasty. I like the fact that this new stuff doesn't stink like a taco. Made out of thin air and has put Russia on notice. That's pretty exciting. Why can't we do that here in the United States? We will answer that question and more when we come back right here on the Big Talker, here at the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. See you in a minute. You're tuned in to the Big Talker Network, Wilmington, North Carolina's premier internet station for news and talk radio programming. Find us online at bigtalker.live.
When might you be buzzed? When you suddenly love everything.
You guys! I love this song! I love these nachos. I love our kickball league. Ugh! I love this guy. What's your name? You know what I'd love? A ride when it's time to head out.
If you see a buzzed warning sign, call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
I love your car. Is this real leather?
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Pender County Emergency Management says crews will be back on the job today, battling a fire in the Holly Shelter Game Lands in Hampstead that now covers more than 1,500 acres. Emergency managers posted on social media that nearly a half dozen agencies have responded to try and extinguish the fire. As of late last night, it was 14% contained. So far, there is no threat to any homes, but smoke from the fire may affect people living in Maple Hill, Holly Ridge, and other neighborhoods along the border between Pender and Onslow counties. A man charged in a fatal hit-and-run has pleaded not guilty in a New Hanover County courtroom. Walter Wade Ang is charged with felony hit-and-run resulting in death after allegedly driving a vehicle into an apartment in December of 2021. It happened at Hawthorne Commons near UNCW on Saturday, December 4th. A couple in the apartment was rushed to New Hanover Regional Medical Center with serious injuries. 48-year-old Kelly Prince later died at the hospital. Ang's next court date is September 26th. New Hanover County school leaders have released a new policy that aims to address sexual misconduct complaints more quickly. Sydney Hoover with the Star News reports, earlier this month, the school board unanimously voted to add an informal investigation process into its Title IX policy. The new process will provide faster resolution than the formal process. There are specific rules. The informal process is only an option if a student files a complaint involving another student or an employee against another employee. It cannot be used if the complaint involves a student and an employee. And happening today, bring your friends, your chairs, your blankets, and your love of jazz. The Bellamy Mansion in Wilmington is hosting 4 upcoming Jazz at the Mansion events starting today and going into October. You're invited to the back lawn of the Bellamy Mansion for a sizzling summer show with the Mangrove Quintet, led by Manny Santos on the drums. That event will begin at 6:30. For more on these stories, you can head on over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Still going to hold on to the hot temperatures, but won't be as hot as it was yesterday. We'll climb into the low 90s inland of the coast, upper 80s to near 90 for the coastal areas today under partly cloudy skies and a few showers and storms in store for us throughout the afternoon hours. But as we head towards the overnight hours tonight, we have a better chance for a few showers and storms in the Cape here, but not expecting anything widespread as our temperatures drop down to the lower 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com.
If you enjoy the programming on The Big Talker, the best way to take it with you wherever you go and have access anytime you want it is the Big Talker app. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. Go to bigtalker.live, download it for your Apple or Android device. has all kinds of options for you. You can listen to programming, our video content. You can even watch it right there live on the app. Go to bigtalker.live, download the app for Android or Apple, and enjoy content from the Big Talker wherever you go, whenever you want it, however you want it.
Tune in to the WWAY News at 6 p.m.
Thank you for joining us tonight for Your News at 6. I'm Hannah Patrick.
I'm Randy Aldridge. We want to get straight to our WWAY team coverage of last night.
For the biggest and most compelling stories that make a difference.
On the scene shortly after the blaze began and has the story now.
Cleveland is one of the fastest growing towns in the country.
First court appearance this morning in Pender County.
WWAY News at 6 p.m. This is the place.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
No way. I wish I had any. Then I wouldn't run into the level of problems I keep running into every morning. But it's all right. Welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad, as we try to connect with some of the smart people on the planet. Just got my coffee together.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Cahoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
I'm excited. That article I sent you on the styrene. Is this not amazing?
Yeah. The worms in question were beetle larvae, which look like, they're worm-like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have these chewing mandibles that allow them to chomp down on stuff, put it in their guts, and then the bacteria in their guts break the stuff down. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Now, the part that's amazing is that it's, along the lines of what you had mentioned yesterday, and I didn't even know it existed, was using fertilizer to process oil slicks.
Right,
and it's probably costing a lot less and a lot more effective than, like, a dishwashing detergent.
Oh, yeah. The stuff the dispersant they use on oil spills is a concoction of a variety of compounds. Some of them are light petroleum liquids, actually, to help dissolve the stuff into oil slicks. And then it's a couple of different kinds of detergents that break the stuff down.
Surfactants and detergents trying to make it water soluble, but the bacteria just ate it.
Right. Yeah, the bacteria.
Or microbe,
actually,
I'm sorry.
I had a grad student who worked on that question way back, and she looked at bacterial activity when you had oil or water or oil and the dispersant. And the bacteria actually like the dispersant better than the oil.
Oh.
Which makes some sense. The dispersant, Corexit brand name, there's two versions of it, but the bacteria digested the Corexit really well, and which is not surprising because it's a mixture of stuff. And they did break down the oil to some degree, but oil is basically hydrocarbon. It's like fat. Literally, fats are oily. The chemistry is a little different if you dig into it, but
it's still mostly carbon and
carbon. Yeah. And, it's energy rich, but it doesn't provide the nitrogen and the phosphorus that you also need in your diet. Nitrogen's the key component of proteins, and phosphorus is required for a couple of different things, among them nucleic acids, the genome.
Okay.
If you're going to make DNA, you need phosphate for that, as well as nitrogen and carbon. So, coming back to the fertilizer thing, They again, when the Exxon Valdez broke up, in Prince William Sound in Alaska, they tried all these different methods. They tried the dispersants. They tried steam cleaning beaches.
Sorry?
Literally. They steam
the same
clean.
thing they do to my jacket?
Yeah, exactly, only at a bigger scale. And the idea was that steam, being hot would liquefy the oil, which, is kind of goopy and almost solid.
Viscous.
Up there,
very
late spring. And the problem with steam cleaning, there's a reason you don't wear the jacket while they're doing that.
Oh, really?
It sterilizes everything, too.
Including the component inside the chute.
Yeah, it cooks everything. And so when they steam clean beaches, they got the oil off. They killed all the organisms that lived there, which is bad. And they also tried fertilizer, and just basic plant fertilizer, some nitrogen, phosphorus, and so on. And they found that although the dispersants and the steam cleaning were real fast, they were also lethal to an awful lot of the organisms on the beaches and on the rocks. But when you added fertilizer, it took a while, but the natural biota responded to the fertilizer by growing and metabolizing the oil. If you provide the nutrients, the bacteria and other things that naturally live there will metabolize the oil. People forget that oil, crude oil, is a natural product. And it's been leaking out into the oceans from underground for many, many, millennia, centuries, millions of years. And there are bacteria that naturally will break it down. And you give them the nutrients they need, and they'll do it. So the fertilized beaches took longer to have the oil break down and go away, but it did, and without killing everything else. I mean, there was some immediate damage from the oil, of course, and that was unavoidable. But those beaches that were fertilized recovered much better than the other beaches did. So
as a limnologist, oceanographer, an understanding of different types of biota, right? More so than most people would. Just in my own observation, there seems to be this really interesting balance in nature where every bad thing has something that lives on it, whether it's waste or dead material, whether it's a dead deer or a dead tree.
Right.
There's some form of life that will correct that and break it into what the rest of the planet needs. That if we were to have just gotten the hell out of the way, we would have probably done much better.
In some ways, yeah. We're impatient.
But but to help out the microbes, we just sprinkle a little bit of, for us diners at a restaurant, it's almost like sprinkling salt. Right? When you put the phosphates and other nitrogen items on there, suddenly everybody's got a smorgasbord with oil at the bottom. It's like everybody eating Brussels sprouts, and nobody likes Brussels sprouts. You put a little salt on it, and everybody's after them.
Yeah, and if you don't eat the Brussels sprouts and put them in your garden as compost, they will break down.
Naturally, without anybody intervening.
Yeah, something else will eat them.
And it doesn't matter if it's made in America, made in China, made in France, doesn't matter.
That's right. That's
pretty remarkable.
That's the principle of composting, right?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, you put all that stuff, food scraps and whatnot, in a compost pile. Matter of fact, to extend that reasoning, one of the ways of disposing of animal carcasses, in North Carolina we grow an awful lot of swine, for example, along with chickens, turkeys, and cows, and so on. But at any one time, we've got 10 million pigs out there, roughly. And some number of them die before they get to market. Well, what do you do with the dead ones? Well, there are different options, but one of the options has been to compost them. And basically, you bury a dead pig in a big pile of wood chips, and the natural bacteria and fungi and whatnot will decompose that carcass, use the wood chips as a source of carbon, and the swine carcass as a source of nutrients, and give it a year, which is what composting takes, depending on, quantities and all that. And it's all gone.
Wow.
It's all broken down. And you have not polluted the water. You have not dumped a dead pig in a dumpster somewhere to stink up the place.
And now you have fertilizer that you can use to grow more corn, more soy, or whatever.
And that compost, is ultimately usable, and safely so. It actually gets warm as the decomposition takes place, and that tends to kill off the pathogens. And so, that's a method. And wood chips, let's face it, if you own a chipper, you can chip stuff and make your own pile.
Yeah.
You can buy it.
You can rent one for a couple of days and generate enough wood chips to last you.
Yeah, that's right. So, there are a lot of natural processes like that we can take advantage of if we're patient. Mother Nature is sometimes slow, but bound to get there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question for you as an educator.
Sure.
You had mentioned your graduate student was asking the question about fertilizer on oil, correct?
Right.
In your position, do the students come to you with an inherent curiosity for these questions, or is there something that you do to inspire them to jumpstart that curiosity? That's an excellent question. They typically come, well motivated. That's my rule of thumb has been to the student. You provide the motivation and the actual hours that you're going to put in. And, I'm here to advise you. Now, in terms of choosing research ideas, I like to make sure that they have a sense of ownership of their ideas. Some advisors put them onto a project and say, here's what I want you to do. And I've tended to shy away from doing that. I'd rather have them think about things, and we'll do some back and forth. We'll have a series of meetings, and we talk about ideas. I want to know what they're interested in. And, they've already chosen to work with me, and so they have a pretty good idea of what I do, and I go through that in more detail, tell them the things I'm interested in, and so forth. But I've had students work on things that were, tangential at best to what I was doing at that time. I've had others work on research projects that I had underway. It all works. The real question is, do they feel a sense of ownership of the project they're doing? And whether it's an idea that I nudged them into, or an idea that they came in with and that we've refined as we've discussed it, as long as they have that sense of ownership, this is my project, these are my ideas, this is what I'm going to do, I think it works pretty well. In some cases, I'm a little bit more directive, and in other cases it's like, yeah, that's great, go for it. So, my aim there is to foster that sense of intellectual curiosity. And quite often, once they've got actual data, they get surprised. It's like, oh, look at that. And okay.
You see that light bulb moment go off in their heads, like, oh, wow. And, they hadn't seen that coming, and it's like, cool, huh? This is why we do this.
Yeah.
You've just discovered something new. And, I hope they carry that with them as they go along. That sense of discovery. There's so much stuff out there to learn. Like the story about the beetle larvae, the worms eating the polystyrene. It was a chance observation, or somebody said, "Gee, I wonder if."
Yeah.
Yeah, and tried that, and it's like, holy mackerel, look at that.
Gee, I was relating that along the lines in a more physical form, where the Wright brothers came from Ohio out here with an idea and some wood.
Yeah.
And not a whole lot of concept behind safety. I mean, we didn't have parachutes or they were just like, let's find a place that's not a bunch of rocks and scrub, so that if I do, fall, I'm not going to die. I might break my arm. So there was some forethought, but the whole curiosity thing was like, well, can we make this fly?
Yeah.
And as outlandish as it was, because I'm betting their neighbors were like, like the story of Noah's Ark. You're out of your mind. What do you think? What kind of stupid is this? And then boom, they're in the air.
They realized, hey, if we get this thing off the ground, we don't want to run into a tree.
Right. So they sort of thought this through a little bit.
They did, yeah. It's fine to get it up in the air. What about bringing it back down again? You don't want to hit something that suddenly stops you. So the Outer Banks made a lot of sense. There weren't a lot of people, not a lot of structures, very few trees. And the trees that are out there were short,
And pretty good hospital nearby.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay,
but,
maybe not.
They were counting on not getting hurt, but that was because they chose a pretty good place in which to do it. You see all those old-timey movies of people testing their flying machines, and they jump off the buildings. And
oh, my God. Or the guy that decapitates himself nearly with the hopping, spinning, helicopter-looking fairground ride, midway ride.
Happened to some of those folks. They hadn't thought through, what if this doesn't work? What's going to happen if it crashes?
And that's sort of the cost of to humanity to fly. Because not everybody was going to survive, right? Same with the space program, same with seafaring, same with just about anything, like discovering which mushrooms aren't going to kill you. Right? So we've been doing this as a species ever since we climbed out of the trees and lost our tails.
Right. Yeah. Are those berries good to eat, or will they kill me? And, I'm sure that there were folks that were used for taste testing.
The slower ones, right? He can't run away, so.
Well, or maybe the oldest ones, who had, kind of aged out.
Yep, Grandpa's already a problem and can't, here, gum this down, Granddad, see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Here you go, Grandpa, let us know if this is okay to eat. And if it's not, well, you've had a good life.
So that curiosity is ingrained probably more so into our species, into our form of mammal than any other creature on the planet.
Well, and we're very adaptable.
Yeah.
That's why you find us everywhere.
Yeah.
What other mammal species, other than domesticated things, is found all over the planet?
From the pole to the pole, pretty much.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to find penguins in Africa. Not unless they were placed there.
Yeah. And good news, there were no lions in North America, at least when humans showed up.
Oh, well, that's definitely one less predator to worry about.
Yeah.
Now, how do we get this curiosity jump-started? Because it seems like this is the one element, right, out of the whole table of elements, the one element that we are, because we have Aldo Steinfeld, we talked about him yesterday, generating aircraft fuel out of thin air.
Right.
And that had to be based on curiosity as well. How do we reinvigorate that curiosity into children in our education system, or is that just sterilized? Is it gone?
That creativity is not evenly distributed across the population, for one thing.
Okay, fair.
Quite often it involves connecting different ideas together or different knowledge bases together and saying, as we were talking about yesterday, the Haber-Bosch process took high pressure heat and a catalyst to make atmospheric nitrogen gas into ammonia. And this kerosene idea was to take carbon dioxide and water and make syngas out of it, carbon monoxide and hydrogen, using high temperature from solar power, and then making organic molecules like kerosene out of that. And it certainly involves catalysts and that sort of thing. But it's an extension. It's a logical extension of what synthetic chemists have been doing for a while. And it just happens to be very inventive. And, they fixed or solved one or two or maybe three problems that stood in the way. But once you've solved, the first 10 or 12 problems, then solving the next one becomes that much easier. And it's just a matter of a creative person saying, what if?
Mm-hmm.
What if I tried this? And sometimes, you learn stuff from books, you read about these things, and you think, what if? Sometimes you're playing around in the lab and something accidental happens. That's how Teflon was invented.
Huh.
Yeah, literally, some guy back in the 1930s mixed some chemicals together and let them react, and came back the next day and found this material that had formed in his lab, and realized, gee, this is strange stuff. And, figured out what had happened and went from there. And so now we have, this giant fluorochemicals industry, some of which is good and some of which is bad.
Right.
Yeah. We like the products. We don't like the
byproducts. Right.
Yeah. And so, we come back around to, are there ways to reduce the pollution? And that's where, more creative thinking has to take place. And, as it turns out, there are apparently bacteria or fungi, I forget which. I saw a paper recently where apparently these microbes can, in fact, break down PFAS compounds.
Oy.
Yeah. And, maybe not all of them, and maybe not real fast, but they have the ability to do it.
Without adding more chemicals.
Right.
Or
and
expensive
they do
reverse.
It on their own.
Right.
So, the logical next steps would be, how can we harness that innate ability and make use of it? Now, there's a lot goes into that, but that's where the creativity comes in, and that's where all the previous knowledge that we've accumulated over the years would play a role too. We know how to look for the enzymes. We know how to look for the genes that code for those enzymes. And so, we've got this big toolbox we can apply to that set of problems. And if one person doesn't have the whole toolbox, others can pitch in. So, we're a cooperative social species at our best. And, that's the nature of the scientific enterprise. We share ideas with each other. And, you come and give a talk at a seminar and you say, here's the problem, and I'm partway there, and somebody in the audience says, I have an idea. Let's talk afterwards.
And that's something that doesn't happen in business. Because business is like, I have a secret and you can't have it. But in science, it's actually, help me figure this out.
Right.
And then when you think you figured it out, to make damn sure you got it right, you're supposed to give it to all the other scientists to try it themselves.
We publish it, yeah. That's right.
And then peer review is where other people come back and say, these are the results we got that either match or with a slight tweaking exceeded or whatever, but they're all either validating or debunking so that you can't have water-powered vehicles running around.
For us, the gold standard is peer-reviewed publication. So you get it out there, and others will check it out to see if what you claim is correct. And, if they find out, we couldn't make it work. So how did you make it work? There's some back and forth there.
Fusion, I think, what was it, about 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when somebody tried publishing a fusion paper and then got shut down?
Oh, the fusion. Yeah, that was back in the,
Was it that
I
long?
want to say the late 90s.
Oh, my God, I'm getting old.
Cold fusion, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember when that came out, and it was terribly exciting because cold fusion was the idea that you action releasing an enormous amount of energy at basically room temperature.
And
instead of having to, build a tokamak or, whatever these are. And fusion would be a limitless source of energy. And this paper, and there was two fellas working out of Utah. I think it was Utah State. Anyway, published this paper, and I remember talking it over with colleagues in chemistry and so forth. And the electrochemists were real excited about it because it was an electrochemical technique. The physicists didn't buy it.
From the outset, they just...
Yeah, they didn't buy it. And somebody finally did the physics calculations and showed that if what they had claimed was true, the neutron emissions from the experimental reaction should have killed them.
That's a good test. That's a metric you can't get around.
Yeah, right. We'll only believe you if you're dead.
Right. It's sort of like the Salem witch trials.
Right.
There's your conviction right there.
Right. Only you've selected yourself out of existence. And so, it wound up being debunked. And there's back and forth in the literature about it. And the two guys who published this clearly had not fully done their homework. I mean, they were making an astounding claim. And astounding claims need astounding evidence to back them up, right?
Yeah, I would think.
If
we've cured cancer, prove it.
Yeah, exactly. Prove it. Yeah, show us, and demonstrate it over and over again. Let others know how you did it so they can test the idea and make sure it works.
And put it in my DeLorean so I can just start dumping paper bags and banana peels and I don't have to worry about charging it anymore.
Right. So
that would be awesome. Do you have a moment? I need to take a news break, and when we come back, there's a curious line of questioning about these super beetle larva things that
sure.
just it's eating at me. Ha!
Yep.
You see what I did there? It's eating at me. I'm sorry. I'm horrible. I'm not good at politics. I'm not good at humor.
As long as the larvae aren't crawling up your leg, munching.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back on the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad, right after this.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Pender County Emergency Management says crews will be back on the job today, battling a fire in the Holly Shelter Gamelands in Hampstead that now covers more than 1,500 acres. Emergency managers posted on social media that nearly a half dozen agencies have responded to try and extinguish the fire. As of late last night, it was 14% contained. So far, there is no threat to any homes, but smoke from the fire may affect people living in Maple Hill, Holly Ridge, and other neighborhoods along the border between Pender and Onslow counties. A man charged in a fatal hit-and-run has pleaded not guilty in a New Hanover County courtroom. Walter Wade Ang is charged with felony hit-and-run resulting in death after allegedly driving a vehicle into an apartment in December of 2021. It happened at Hawthorne Commons near UNCW on Saturday, December 4th. A couple in the apartment was rushed to New Hanover Regional Medical Center with serious injuries. 48-year-old Kelly Prince later died at the hospital. Ang's next court date is September 26th. New Hanover County school leaders have released a new policy that aims to address sexual misconduct complaints more quickly. Sydney Hoover with the Star News reports, earlier this month, the school board unanimously voted to add an informal investigation process into its Title IX policy. The new process will provide faster resolution than the formal process. There are specific rules. The informal process is only an option if a student files a complaint involving another student or an employee against another employee. It cannot be used if the complaint involves a student and an employee. And happening today, bring your friends, your chairs, your blankets, and your love of jazz. The Bellamy Mansion in Wilmington is hosting 4 upcoming Jazz at the Mansion events starting today and going into October. You're invited to the back lawn of the Bellamy Mansion for a sizzling summer show with the Mangrove Quintet led by Manny Santos on the drums. That event will begin at 6:30. For more on these stories, you can head on over to wwaytv3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Still going to hold on to the hot temperatures, but won't be as hot as it was yesterday. We'll climb into the low 90s inland of the coast, upper 80s to near 90 for the coastal areas today under partly cloudy skies and a few showers and storms in store for us throughout the afternoon hours. But as we head towards the overnight hours tonight, we have a better chance for a few showers and storms in the Cape here, but not expecting anything widespread as our temperatures drop down to the lower 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Join Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to the program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
Folks, you must visit Angie's Fresh Produce, 4447 Long Beach Road, Southport. Beautiful fresh produce at a great price. Angie's has just about every vegetable you want. In-store shopping and pickup, and all wheelchair accessible. Call Angie's Fresh Produce at 910-477-9068.
If you're enjoying the content you find on Big Talker, any of your shows, all the hosts, you really need to make sure you're following and liking us on Facebook. There's a video section. You can watch all the live video of programs as they happen. You can also see video of past content that you may have missed for whatever reason. Plus, even better, you can share it with a friend. Let other people know how much you enjoy the Big Talker and the great content we provide, and interact with other listeners and the hosts in the comment section live as it happens. Big Talker Net on Facebook.
Hey, welcome back to the Asylum on the Big Talker Network, the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. I'm going to forego the rest of this silliness because this is just too fascinating of a subject, and I apologize for the terrible phone connection on my end. I think the internet is just getting overwhelmed with all this information and data that's coming down the pipe this morning. That's just amazing. I'm still trying to wrap my head around these worms and breaking down the styrene, and one of the basic components of understanding life on planet Earth is to understand the carbon atom as being one of the most abundant because it bonds with damn near every element on the periodic table. So just about everything has a carbon atom, right? Whether it's sugars or starches, as you were discussing, or the polystyrene, which is nothing more than long hydrocarbon chains, which is based on carbon, obviously. And since a lot of that article was a little over my head, and as I'm understanding you, these things are actually chewing the styrene at the molecular level. They're breaking the bonds with their mandibles. Am I getting that right?
No. The beetle larvae in this paper were eating polystyrene, which is one of the forms of plastic. And the larvae look like worms, only they've got these mandibles, kind of like these jaws that break the stuff up, and then they swallow, smaller pieces of it, kind of like what we do when we eat. You're served an ear of corn while you chew off the kernels and chew them up and into your gut. And then your digestive enzymes go to work on the stuff inside the corn. Now, some portion of the corn kernels are made of cellulose, which we cannot digest. And so some of that material will come out the other end, to put it more delicately.
Unabashed,
but in the case
unmolested.
Of the beetle larvae, what they do is they chew up the polystyrene into smaller and smaller pieces and swallow them into their gut. And inside their gut, there lives an assemblage of bacteria. And those bacteria include some species that make enzymes that can cleave the polystyrene polymer. And that's what plastics are. They're polymers. In other words,
is many things.
Yeah, many molecules of the same type, all bonded together in chains and sheets and so forth at the molecular level. And those bacteria have enzymes that allow them to break the bonds between the molecules that constitute the polymer. So with polystyrene, you have styrene molecules bonded together to make the polystyrene polymer. The bacteria can break the polymer down into individual styrene molecules. Styrene is an organic compound. It's got carbon in it. That's what makes for organic stuff. They got carbon in them. And then the bacteria or the worms, I'm not, it could be both, can break down the styrene metabolically. And, it's kind of like sugar.
Wow.
It's not the same formula, but they can use it. And they oxidize that carbon just the way you oxidize carbon when you digest sugars, fats, proteins, and so forth, and extract energy from that oxidation process. So it's pretty cool. The trick is to have the right enzyme. And in this case, those bacteria have that enzyme that allows them to break down polystyrene. Cellulose, which makes up paper and cotton and so forth, and is really a polymer of glucose, which is your basic sugar, one of them. And the trick with cellulose digestion, and only certain bacteria can break down cellulose, is that bond. It's a particular bond between glucose molecules that makes up cellulose.
Oh, my.
We humans, right? So if you swallow cotton balls, you're going to poop out cotton balls. So,
oh, my. That's
altered form. I don't encourage people to do that. But, you can't eat paper or sawdust and get anything out of it.
It may not kill you, but it's not going to help you. It's just going to kind of go through you and, maybe a splinter or two.
Kale would be better than eating paper. Yeah, there's at least something digestible in kale. A lot of cellulose in there. It's what we call fiber.
Oh, okay.
When they talk about fiber in your diet, but don't eat paper. Yeah.
Now, at the end of the paper, they were, and I'm not sure if I got this part right at the end of the article, that they may be able to extract what these bacteria are and be able to use it directly in landfills and ocean piles and things like that.
Yeah, this is where the modern science comes in so well. We have the ability to go in using molecular biological tools, genetic analysis and so forth, and figure out who the bacteria are in their guts. Look for the genes and the enzymes that break down polystyrene. And once we know what genes code for those enzymes, it's probably a family of them, we can synthesize those genes and put them to work. Now, that sounds simple. Boom, you can do it. Well, it's more complex than that. Yeah, but
it's a known timeline.
Yeah, and once you have the enzyme, we know enough biochemistry about enzymes to be able to figure out how to optimize its performance. And we could use that or culture the bacteria. There are a lot of different avenues. And use, one or more of those methods to break down polystyrene in landfills and other situations. Now, landfills are funky places. Biologically.
But if there was like a magic dust you could put on there and all these little microbes went to work and just dissolved everything back into some sort of organic compound that would, I don't know, add nutrients to grass or, to the ground so that you could grow things.
Yeah, I'll turn that organic carbon into something useful, and then, you have to add other nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. Polystyrene is doesn't contain nitrogen or phosphorus, and you got to have those and trace metals and so on and so on. But
it's possible to let nature do it, right?
Yeah, in a natural environment, you will find those nutrients depending on the circumstances. And so, what we've been handed, in a sense, is that nature has already generated for us organisms that can break the stuff down, that will eat polystyrene and break it down.
And the only thing non-organic about polystyrene is the poly aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's the part that's mind-bending, and you're saying that's the same with oil, like crude oil and gasoline are actual organic compounds.
Hydrocarbons. Yeah, many different ones. And the trick there, again, is to break down the molecules into smaller and smaller parts to make it easier to metabolize them. And with oil, oil is a natural product, right?
Mm-hmm. And all it is rotting, rotting in decayed dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And other plant matter,
so
right.
It's a natural product. And so, quite logically, there are organisms that can break down hydrocarbons quite readily. The problem we have, we humans, is that we extract oil in vast quantities really quickly. So when we have an oil spill, we kind of overwhelm the natural ecosystem with how much of it there is. But
that if we dropped like a can, it would have been absorbed in a couple of months and no real damage. But dumping an entire boat.
Down. You bust a ship against a rock, and you've got 11 million gallons of crude oil or whatever. That's a short-term disaster. In the long run, that oil will break down. Now, one of the other issues with really big oil spills is that it isn't just the long-chain hydrocarbons. You've got other compounds in oil like polynucleated aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, that are quite toxic.
That's like worse than PFAS. It's got more letters and they sound more angry.
Yeah, and those compounds are well known to include some serious carcinogens, and they're all around us. That's a whole different set of topics to talk about, but
it's exciting to know that we are on a path to extract.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've done processes like this before. So again, like being on a known timeline, now that we have identified an organism that hosts an organism that does something we want, we can now start exploring on how to extract and scale up the effectiveness of whatever it is that's doing this job. And once we get it into normal styrene,
that's right.
We can do a lot more with it ourselves, right? That's mind-bending.
That's right. Yeah, it lends itself to what we call biotechnology, where we make commercial or industrial use of natural processes, life forms, enzymes, and everything in between, to generate products or to do jobs for us.
Do work for us,
would be difficult otherwise.
But I really don't know if I want to go to Africa and hire a bunch of third-world people to chew styrene. I'd much rather develop some bugs, right? And there's a whole ethical issue in there to begin with. But, it's doing incredible amounts of work basically for... And it's not even for free. There's like this deficit where the oil is a very bad thing or the styrene is a very bad thing. So doing the work is not necessarily... what's the word I'm looking for? It's productive in a way that's hard to understand because of how bad the item is that it's working with, and turning it into something we can use is...
Right.
Wow.
It brings to mind, people don't often appreciate how far we've gone down this road of utilizing organisms to make things for us or do things for us.
Yeah.
For example, insulin, which diabetics have to have, at least in some cases, to maintain their sugar balance in their blood, is a biological engineering product. We make insulin in big cultures of bacteria, E. coli, I think, that have had genes for insulin production put in them, so they produce insulin, and that's how we generate so much of it. I mean,
so we don't have to pull it from a pig anymore.
Right.
So the pig is for barbecue, and these enzymes are for insulin.
That's right. Yeah, they do it in big batch cultures, bioreactors. And so, that's a great example of harnessing natural systems and processes for our benefit with no real harm. People often, react and say, biotechnology, ooh, you're going to turn us all into frogs. No. Among other things, we're going to keep diabetics
That's
alive.
the scientifically ignorant people I'm trying to...
Yeah. You got to dig into it a bit and find out, okay, what are the concerns? How do we address them? And do the benefits outweigh the liabilities? And in the case of insulin production, it's a no-brainer.
But in the case of Bakelite that DuPont's been cranking out, not so much.
And so, that's been done for decades now. And, is it of benefit? Well, hell yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a diabetic and you're injecting insulin, guess where that came from? Came from biotechnology. And you're going to thank your lucky stars that we had that on the table for you. So, that's just one example. There are many others. But, again, when we look around at nature and we find a beetle larva that can eat polystyrene, and it's got bugs in its gut that can break that stuff down and turn that plastic pollution stuff into harmless compounds, boy, that's cool.
Yeah.
We can take advantage of that.
Sign me up.
We're clever. Yeah, we are a clever species. And if we use that cleverness to solve real problems, then, we get to stick around. Yeah. You get into trouble when you can't solve problems.
Now, do you
adapt?
Do you find this to be like a cornerstone common element in all of the disciplines that you've studied, from limnology to oceanography to biology?
Yeah.
That a lot of the problems that we have can be asked and solved through the use of natural processes in biology and certainly waterway transformations.
Certainly understanding the scientific underpinnings of a situation. You think about water supply. Well, where does it come from? Well, I get it out of the ground. Yeah, okay, so you're harvesting groundwater. Okay, how does that work? It works differently under different circumstances. When you realize that your groundwater supplies are contaminated, which we found out here 5 years ago.
Whoops.
The CFPUA was pumping river water into an aquifer. And the idea was to store water pumped out of the river in the winter to use that water later in the summer when the demand goes up. And that's all well and fine. They call it aquifer storage and retrieval, ASR. Well, then we found out water was contaminated with Gen X. Oh, crap.
And we just pumped our entire aquifer full of this stuff.
Yeah.
So everything that was already there that was clean is no longer clean.
Right, and so they had to go and pump that aquifer out again, and that they did that right away. I mean, within a couple months of discovering the Gen X problem, they had a company hired to pump out the aquifer so they could at least undo most of the damage. But as anyone who knows about groundwater would know, it's not quite so simple. It's not like pumping the water into a tank. and you just empty it. And so our fundamental knowledge of how aquifers work had to be brought to bear on that problem.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we're not going to be doing aquifer storage and retrieval projects anytime real soon because, we're not in a position to put clean water into the ground yet.
We just don't have it. Right, not yet.
We don't have it yet. I've got a news item right up here on my screen, just came out today. The CFPUA, our local water supplier here in Wilmington, the Public Utility Authority, is very close to having their granular activated carbon system online. They've had a few delays. They had hoped to do it back in June, I guess.
Right, May and June, I think, was the first launch date.
And, they've had supply chain issues. The contractors had some of that kind of trouble. I mean, every time I turn around, there's a delay with damn near everything. But they're on track, and they're in a process of doing preliminary on the system. It's intended to remove those PFAS compounds from the incoming river water and to remove them down to below detection limits, which are really low. And so that's finally going to generate a safe water supply for us. That there's no question that it will be safe. And so they're hoping to have that system fully up and operating in early fall. And that's a good thing. But, here we are 5 years down the road from discovering the problem or having it publicized. The state knew about it, and they didn't do anything.
Couldn't even get an indictment. Sorry.
I wish
still
they
angry.
would.
Yeah.
Now, to help, there's enough culpability out there at the state level
to cover all this.
The ChemWars people, of course, need to be held accountable because they knew what they were doing. The state agency people knew what they were doing as well. They knew about it, and they did nothing until it, became public.
It was unsweepable under the rug.
Yeah.
Now
there was the headline, and that blew it all wide open.
Yep, that'll do it.
Sweet sunshine of public disclosure. Let the public know what's going on for real, and we'll take it from there.
And things will change. Now, to give us a little bit of hope into, we're towards the end of the show, I want to sort of do an A-B comparison of approaches to a problem. For example, throwing buckets of money at a problem like granule activated char filters and other technologies, or something that's a little more natural and organic, as in pursuing a beetle larvae or a microbe that can do the work for us. Right. Which do you think would be more sustainable and should be more, encouraged in development and research?
I would love to see us fix pollution at the source.
Oh, third option. See, this is why we have smart people.
Yeah.
So if we don't pollute, we don't have to worry about it. That's
if
I don't know, that's scary. That's progressive thinking right there.
If the public's water and air, then we don't have a problem, do we?
That's remarkable.
With PFAS, the stuff should never have been discharged in the first place. And we're very slowly coming around to controlling those discharges at the source. Now, with polystyrene, that is a product. It's not a waste product. It's the product.
It's the end product.
Right.
It's your packing peanuts. It's your, corner protectors on your television when shipped.
Exactly. This is something we actually use. So,
and we can't reuse.
Then involve there are a couple of major options. One is that if you can collect that stuff and then digest it, or better yet, use it in some other way. Think of harnessing that can digest polystyrene, and what could they be made to do for us aside from just breaking the stuff? could they synthesize something for us? Those are questions. When I see a big resource like polystyrene, and I'll look at it as a resource.
Okay.
What else could be done with it? Right now, it's a single-use product. You buy it, you use it, you throw it out.
Now that's also
that's
true for the process.
Works.
Like in the I can't pronounce it all. Those things when they're clogged, when they've lived out there, you have to throw them away.
Yep.
But
in that case, no. What they do is they recharge it.
Okay, but a filter, for example, they would.
Yeah, they would take that material and they would extract the PFAS compounds
safely
using a solvent approach, some kind of solvent, and then take that highly concentrated PFAS waste and burn it in a high-energy combustion system to destroy it.
Now, on the other end of the coin, the beetle, if we had a beetle or a microbe, it would basically die and become plant food, which is a much cleaner, much more affordable process than extracting the bad stuff in a solvent and then burning the solvent, hopefully without ingesting it into the air. I'm really liking these beetles.
Yeah, and bear that their aim in life as a beetle is to make more beetles.
Perfect.
And so you get
have at it.
A small culture of those guys started, and figure out they'll eat polystyrene, but they need a few other things in their diet. So how can we optimize that process? Throw some other things in there that maybe
a couple banana peels.
Get rid of.
Maybe play some Isaac Hayes in the back to keep the procreation going.
Exactly. And pretty soon you've got a very large scale beetle system or bacterial system, whichever
self-sustaining
path you choose. And now you can scale it up to handle very large quantities of that material.
So I'm going to go with that option.
There you go.
I like that. I think that's why we have such an interest with, the chance meeting of you several months ago, just based on knowing your limnology, which I didn't even knew was a word. That was a new word to me. And then oceanography, I understood. Biology, I understood. Striped bass, I understood. And it was like, wait, there's a lot of connections here that actually pivot on my weakest subject in school, which was chemistry. But now that my basic understanding of chemistry, which is we started with the carbon compound in our studies because it's the basis of our life. Now I understand a little bit better that crude oil and gasoline, as toxic and nasty and whatever as they are only in that fashion because of the chain. That if we can break that chain down, it becomes not necessarily harmless, but it becomes more of a process that can be handled naturally.
That's right.
And that's already built into the planet, so we don't need to panic. We don't need to have these $1 million insane ideas. Just let nature do its thing.
Yeah. Think about this as a perspective. What do we do with all these complex hydrocarbons that were formed over millions of years by natural processes? We dig them up and we burn them.
Genius.
Is that really the best way to use those complex mixtures of molecules made by organic processes?
Yeah,
we do have a petrochemical industry that manufactures lots of useful products from petroleum as a crude feedstock. But, when you think about what we do with most hydrocarbons, we just burn them.
I was going to say, trying to release the chemical energy inside some of these compounds, burning them seems to be it's kind of like exploring food that explodes. Did we stop with popcorn, or is that just the only one? Right? There's got to be other ways of extracting the energy, as we do from, say, the Atomic Energy Commission, looking into individual elements, that there's a lot of energy in this atom. How can we access it with the greatest amount of efficiency? Hey, let's set it on fire.
Well, yeah, right.
I mean, that's the caveman in us.
It's a one-way street. Once you burned it, that's it.
That's it. Done.
Right.
You have
Yeah,
carbon
that's
left
it.
over.
And
Remarkable.
Yeah, and you know, at the same time, you're baking the planet with CO2.
But if we can turn the CO2 and H2O back into aircraft fuel,
back into kerosene as a recycled or reusable resource, yeah.
So this is almost like
That
the
makes
water
a lot
cycle
more sense.
raining, but for aircraft.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
It can be done.
Okay, so we've blown right over the top of the hour, I'm sorry. And I'm still excited about it. I'm sure we will have you next Wednesday, if not before, if something doesn't hit me again and I got to ask you. So I appreciate you being here and being such an incredible resource of information and true knowledge. I mean, again, you have more PhDs than I do, so I'm going to run with that. One is a lot more than I got. I mean, I have a BA, or I have a BA and an associate's, right? So at least I'm curious. I don't have to be smart to be curious.
Curiosity is one of the fundamental attributes that we need to encourage. You know, curious. You know, don't ask questions. Don't think about new ideas that you know, we stagnate and we don't make progress. But curiosity drives progress.
And that's what we need. All right.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
I can't emphasize that enough, and having a smart guy like Dr. Cahoon validate that idea lets me know that I am not just talking out my hat. This is a legitimate function. This is how we come up with solutions to our greatest problems, like pollution.
That's right.
And that's including just, polystyrene is one of the nastiest, most handy things to ever have. And now to be able to dispose of it with a bug, what a time to be alive!
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir, and for everybody else and yourself, don't forget, Dr. Cahoon, you are welcome to tune in every morning at 8 o'clock for the Asylum, and we will have another show tomorrow while we play this fantastic tune that's got my attention. And stay tuned for the Consumer Choice Radio, Consumer Choice Center, and, of course, Guns, Politics, and Freedoms. And we will see you next week right here on the Big Talker Network. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. You're tuned in to the Big Talker Network, Wilmington, North Carolina's premier internet station for news and talk radio programming. Find us online at bigtalker.live.
Government has become too big, too overtaxing, and is constantly over-regulating every aspect of your life.
If you agree with that, tune in to Consumer Choice Radio every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM. With me, Yael Osowski.
And me, David Clement. For an hour, you'll get expert analysis on what the government is sinking its teeth into next, and how you, as a consumer, can push back.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Pender County Emergency Management says crews will be back on the job today, battling a fire in the Holly Shelter Game Lands in Hampstead that now covers more than 1,500 acres. Emergency managers posted on social media that nearly a half dozen agencies have responded to try and extinguish the fire. As of late last night, it was 14% contained. So far, there is no threat to any homes, but smoke from the fire may affect people living in Maple Hill, Holly Ridge, and other neighborhoods along the border between Pender and Onslow counties. A man charged in a fatal hit-and-run has pleaded not guilty in a New Hanover County courtroom. Walter Wade Ang is charged with felony hit-and-run resulting in death after allegedly driving a vehicle into an apartment in December of 2021. It happened at Hawthorne Commons near UNCW on Saturday, December 4th. A couple in the apartment was rushed to New Hanover Regional Medical Center with serious injuries. 48-year-old Kelly Prince later died at the hospital. Ang's next court date is September 26th. New Hanover County school leaders have released a new policy that aims to address sexual misconduct complaints more quickly. Sydney Hoover with the Star News reports, earlier this month, the school board unanimously voted to add an informal investigation process into its Title IX policy. The new process will provide faster resolution than the formal process. There are specific rules. The informal process is only an option if a student files a complaint involving another student or an employee against another employee. It cannot be used if the complaint involves a student and an employee. And happening today, bring your friends, your chairs, your blankets, and your love of jazz. The Bellamy Mansion in Wilmington is hosting 4 upcoming Jazz at the Mansion events starting today and going into October. You're invited